Do you guys know what this thing is? You'll have to figure it out. Hello, hi guys. Hello everyone. This is another update for the spec truck. I wanted to get into clecos really quick because I know we did this with the Fab Diaries, and I started to do it with the Fab Diaries and it got extensive, and then classic me, I did not finish through and finish strong with that. I'm gonna fasten this thing we're gonna talk about soon with a cleco. A cleco is a temporary fastener. I use these all the time. Now, a background on these, I used to work at Cali Customs, and there was a guy named Mike Pram there. Mike has floated around quite a few shops, but he would always have shit clecoed. Like, he would be stabbing these things into everything to hold and like fixture everything, and I was just doing my own thing then, and I wasn't really receptive to like figuring out what that was, and he was not a receptive teacher in any way. And he always had 1/8" drill bits like just everywhere. And I'm like, dude, what is this guy doing? He's drilling 1/8" holes in everything. And he's got all these stupid fasteners, like just mount it and put the hardware in there and don't do that. And over the years, dummy. Clecos are so necessary for building stuff, and especially for temporary holding. A cleco, so you have your parent materials, right? Panel, overlap panel. And then you have, say you want to mount something right here, and you do a hole, and this is an 1/8", but a cleco itself can be a greater diameter, like we have some 3/16 diameter ones. And what this does is this is a temporary fastener. So instead of having a, you wouldn't have a full size hole here for the bolt or whatever, but you would put something in here, the cleco goes in, and it goes in one diameter. And you can see these pins, when this is squeezed, they all go to, everything goes to 1/8". But it's sprung in here, and when you let it go, it expands. And it puts tension on everything. So when you go down through this, and that's 1/8", right? And then you go, whoop, and it pulls everything together, and it keeps it there. And the thing is, that doesn't mean that I would use something like a bolt that would be comparable to an 1/8" hole. It just gives you a center point, and then that's great because you already have a pilot hole set up for whatever hardware is going to go in there. Now, for this style thing, this wing, we're going to use rivets, countersunk rivets, or possible aircraft hard rivets to hold this thing in. And there's some curvature here. So it's really important for this panel, especially if I want this shape, a shape you might be able to see. If you look right here, you can kind of see a profile. And I'm not talking about the bottom profile, but just this. There is some curve. And everything is rolling on that same plane here. So if I want that thing to stick, you guys want to see like a real demo here? All right, so take this guy. Just to make this easy, we'll start with a hole here. All right, so right off the bat, this guy won't go in. Now I have it in. It's pretty tight like that. but it wants to have another panel. So now I have this guy. Now it's not as tight as, you know, a bolt with a nut captured, but you start adding those up and this stuff holds. This stuff's also great for putting like fitment. Like, so say you're setting up fenders on a car in a hood, and you want to square everything up and you want to try to get all the gaps consistent. You can tie one of these off onto your hood, and then if your fender's here, you know, you can tie stuff off like this, and you can add 2, you know, whatever you want, because more rigidity. Like a lot of times I'll set up like 3. I'll do like a triangle if I know I want a lot of hold down, you know, and if I want this to be held together, then I'll do 1, 2, 3 on this guy, and I'll do 1, 2, 3 on this guy, and that'll be super rigid, and you just can kind of lace a bunch of those. One of the other benefits is that it's just an 1/8 inch hole. So like a lot of times I'll just bullshit 1/8 inch holes into stuff, and that's the thing, like when I saw fiberglass being mounted like that, where I saw a ton of these little things that were holding everything like proper and square, like, dude, what are you gonna do about all the holes? And you don't think like the least amount of work is just filling an 1/8 inch hole. Like if that's aluminum, that's like one little tack and burp and you're done, and then sand it and you're all good. Same with steel. And then if it's fiberglass, it's just like a little bit of filler. If you're going hard and you don't give a shit, you could probably just wrap right over that or whatever, or just leave them. But clecos are like such a valuable thing. You can get them on Amazon. You can probably find used ones, like surplus of these things. I think I have about 200 of them, and they're in vehicles right now. So super beneficial. Let's get on with our episode. So I'm very careful with how I talk and regurgitate about aerodynamics, because I'm a really good listener, and I don't know if I'm a complete good repeat info person. Like for example, a really great human that can retain information and regurgitate it really well is Joe Rogan. Like that, he's probably the top tier. I don't know if there's any trophy trucks running a wing that's aggressive. I was very afraid with that because, you know, there's a lot of vehicles, especially street vehicles, where they have this gnarly wing on them, and I've done my fair share of shit talking. And just as far as being a designer and wanting to have really solid functional design, huge fear of shitting the bed with a wing, putting a wing on a trophy truck. That's a challenge, and figuring out, you know, not like, because then you want it maybe just a little lower so it's not as prominent, and you know, all this stuff. My brain is going, don't make it ugly, don't make it like where it's weird, and so I've done the best I can to get good shape, but it has to be completely based off of function. That's the thing. So I can't twist and manipulate location and height as much as I would on some other stuff. So what I want to kind of get into on this episode is this wing. I'll say it's 80% done. It's got the top skin. It doesn't have the verticals on it, like the side plates. It doesn't have the bottom fin or the bottom skin. There's a pretty gnarly structure that's in here, and that's by design. These are 1/2 inch rod ends, and you know, just big, like triangulated 1 inch tube with 1/2 inch chromoly tube. That's like its foundation, and that's for downforce. There's going to be hundreds of pounds of downforce on this thing, so it can't just be something where, you know, I build these minimal supports and then we have just like an aluminum wing. It's going to be floppy dick city. So let's go look at that thing. That was our cleco thing, and then we'll put it on here, and I'll kind of cycle it and go through what's going to happen next. So there used to be old semi trucks and they would have this big old off the back, you know, and they'd have that like, I think they have that on the back of the cab or like on the top of the semi truck, and it'd have all the rivets, you know, look like a little, like a twisted sperm or like a streamlined sperm or raindrop. Big Ollie, I think that's pronounced right? Okay. Big Ollie was like this older Bronco, and it had the ugliest shit on the roof, and people thought it was legendary, and I think it's just an ugly ass Bronco. But I know it's history and all that stuff, but they took one of these and then like, they're like, that looks cool. Let's add that to the top cab, like, of a truck. All that makes sense to an extent, but what I'm getting at is this is the shape you want. You want something that does have some kind of a concave shape. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll build this and I'll roll this edge. I'll put like a radius break in here, and this will be one panel. And then I'll radius break another panel, and I'll run it, and then I'll weld it, blend all this smooth, and then you have this shape. That would be cool if it wasn't dealing with so much downforce, and on top of downforce, running through off-road terrain like a race vehicle would, which is insane, repetitive, abusive impact over and over and over. Needs to have a frame. And on top of that, call it our spoiler, the other part of that chassis, that tin work back there. Not too much height here, so not too concerned about the slip going through here and what this backside or the underside looks like. Really, it's going to be the air that's going over here that we want to be able to manipulate. So with that, I'm like, okay, well, we don't need to build, like, first off, we can't really build this formed thing because it's just not going to have enough structure. If you have structure, you have to be able to build it internally, so this thing can't just be a complete sealed situation. So what we have here, this is the front of the truck. So you guys are the front. And this thing kind of draws, you know, you can see it draws forward on the edges, and it's got kind of a tapered design. This is 10 inches. Wrong. This is 12 inches. This is 10 inches. So there is some tightening too on the edges. But if you look on the back side, it's all framed. 1 inch, 120 wall, half inch, 120 wall, half inch, 120 wall. This thing is, I had to build a fixture on the table. It's not here anymore, but you know, from like all my architectural and structural steel days, I would always build fixtures on the tables and hold things, clamp the shit out of everything, and then weld it. And that's the same with this thing. This thing is completely square, completely true. It's got a lot of work in it, even though it just looks like this. The accuracy is what's important here. Is everything is square, and everything is true, and that's the whole point of this thing, because it is a wing. It's dealing with moving air around and cutting air, and you don't want stuff to be different from one side to the other. So there'll still be another panel that closes all this out. The leading edge, which you can see here, is still long. So we'll roll all the leading edge down. And then the underside panel will roll too, so they'll kind of meet each other here. I think what we'll do, since you can see there's fastener pickups here, but we'll probably run another string of fasteners all on that front edge, because that's the side that's going to want to peel, if anything. And I mean, when's it going to want to peel? Probably at 200 miles an hour. It's never going to do that, but at least build it for so. So this is what we have. There's 2 pivots here, half inch rod end. That's your big juicy stuff. All right, let's put this fucker on. I think with design and you know, pushing, I don't want it to sound corn dick, but pushing the limits of stuff, and especially pushing the limits on things that haven't been done before, or taking risk, There's always a form of discomfort that follows. It's the same with the exotic when we did all like the rear back half chassis on that thing. That was something so foreign that it's very, some people were like, well, you don't, why would you do that? Or why does it need to look like that? Or, you know, and it's like, triggers this discomfort thing. And I don't know, I get through that so easily nowadays, especially if you believe in what you're doing. And then with this, I truly believe this car is gonna work how it should, as long as Kevin drives the shit out of it. Nothing new. And wings are on race cars for a reason. So this is not reinventing the wheel. It's just simply taking knowledge and taking information that works and applying it to a different genre or niche of racing vehicle, and that's what we're doing. So this is the first time I've seen this on here skinned. Did a lot of process with this, figuring out what angle we need here, figuring out the level, you know, making sure that the rod end and then like the tabs and squaring everything was still going to be where we needed it from the plane of the roof. And then drawing some shape forward, like a lot of this stuff, kind of figuring out where all this tightens, figuring out where the directional changes need to be in the middle portion out towards the outside and kind of moving forward. And then also figuring out the plane of this stuff. And what do I mean by the plane of this is like what angle X and Y. So one angle being, if I held, here you go. If I held this out here, where's this gonna drag through the side, right? So you have that angle, and then you have this angle. And both of those I've modeled after the cab and what's happening back here. So this is not as tight as this. And what I mean by tight is this whole, call it a camper shell, comes back and it tightens towards the rear. And this really draws off the cab more than it does tightens. So there's kind of a slip through here. This angle is very similar to what the cab is doing. So you can almost have a panel here and match what the cab's doing. I didn't do it as extreme as what's here. So the last piece we have to do on this, as far as like a dimensional shape, we do need to skin the rear or skin underneath of this thing. And then we do need to put a actuator set up on here in the mechanism and kind of tab that into the structure. But really, this last piece is like, and I have this up here, I'm just gonna burn this one. You know, figuring out what this shape needs to look like. And that could be something, you know, I got to figure out where these mounting locations are, where all the clecos are. And then figuring out like what we want to do here, what this is going to look like. And that's something I'll talk with Ben about, just to really get that shape right and see what we need as a bare minimum. And then that's the same concept I've been doing with this whole thing. It's not just me shooting in the dark and winging this. Oh, dirty pun right there. It's getting all the information and then stylizing and designing it in the most functional way where it looks cool too. And that's been like the whole premise with this thing. So like I said, we need to put side plates on this thing. Construction on the side plates. Originally, it was going to be like a backing plate that was maybe 3/16, and then I'd weld more shape into this. Like I'd put like almost like a clamshell on top of here that's formed aluminum that might have like some breaks in it or some dimension in it. And that's one option. Or we just put like a 1/4-inch plate on here right now, and then Kevin can have this stuff drawn and 3D printed. Or it can be like, you know, it can even be a 3/4-inch plate of aluminum, which there's enough structure here to hold that and enough mounting surface, and then that can be pocketed and designed. So there's options here, but I think what we'll do for the start is we'll just run a 1/4-inch plate with the primary profile, and then we'll figure out what's next on that thing. So that's what all this stuff's for. All the mounting locations. You know, running, this is better when you're trying to have a very rigid surface. I would rather run multiple mounting holes than just like 1, 2, 3. That's bullshit. The more you can get with even a smaller piece of hardware is going to be a much more grip than just running a couple bolts, and then stuff's gonna, you know, wobble out and it's just not gonna work. It's good for pivots and like main accessories, but not stuff like this. So yeah, even grabbing on this right now. I mean, mind you, there's nothing welded yet and it's just tacked, but it's one of those things. And there's math you can do here. And I have the actual sheet of how to figure out how much downforce is on this thing. Because that's the thing, like, how much more structure do you build in here? When the actuator's on there, you'll get a little more. When you weld everything, you'll definitely get more. And then we'll have to come back and feel this thing again and see what kind of loads this thing's gonna get. Go home in 1 week, roughly 6 days from now. It is completely torn apart. Everything we have been filming has a lot to do with the aerodynamics and exterior treatment on this thing. And something to note is the competitive edge that we need to retain. We're a small studio. We are prototyping and doing R&D on this thing, and it's something that's taken a lot of time and resources, and we need to keep that under our belt and release this stuff after the car is already ready and racing. So that's where we're at with this thing. We are filming consistent updates on this, and we will go through every single thing, exterior, interior, all the way to finish. But right now we just got to keep it under wraps, and that's what we're going to do. So hope you enjoy all the other stuff.